Hey, what's going on everybody? Darklight here, and today I've got for you the ultimate guide to Dungeons of Sundaria. We're going to be going over everything from leveling and gearing in the early game all the way to the late game. I'm going to be taking you through the crafting system and how exactly that works. I'm also going to be sharing with you some really cool movement mechanics that I'm excited to share with you that are just going to allow you to get through dungeons extremely quickly. So whether you're a brand new player or somebody who's already experienced, I've designed this guide hopefully to allow everyone to at least learn something from this. So let's hop into our first topic of actually choosing your class. So when it comes to choosing your class in Dungeons of Sundaria, my main advice is just choose the class that fits your playstyle and that you think you're going to have the most fun with. So if you like playing melee classes, try out Rogue or Champion. If you prefer to have a ranged playstyle, then try something like Ranger or Wizard. Um, so just choose what you think you're going to enjoy the most. Now, with that said, I do want to share my personal preferences after playing all 5 classes and getting each one to max level. So by far, my two favorite classes in the game have to be Rogue and Wizard. They are just very fun and smooth to play, their abilities are very enjoyable, and they feel very strong from early game all the way into the late game. Um, Ranger and Champion are also a lot of fun. It's kind of the same thing. They feel good to play all the way through, especially once you get to the tiered gear sets, which is something we will talk about later. They really start to shine. Now, with all that being said, Cleric is kind of my least favorite class to play in the game. Now, the Cleric, don't get me wrong, is still a very viable class, but compared to the other classes, it just tends to feel a bit weaker at all the way throughout the game, and it seems to underperform compared to the other classes. But it is still a very viable class, and if you think it's a class you would enjoy playing, then by all means go ahead and play Cleric. Now with that out of the way, let's move on and start talking about how to actually level from level 1 all the way to level 20. So jumping right into it, there are kind of two ways that you can look at going from level 1 to 20. The first way I would recommend if this is your first playthrough throughout the game, and that is just to naturally go through the order of dungeons, leveling and gearing as you go through. Now, as you're doing this, one thing I would say is that you should talk to Captain Laurent in the guardhouse, as he will give you quests for each dungeon. Now, you'll get one quest per dungeon, and completing those quests will give you some gold as well as XP going throughout the game. I will also show the actual order of the dungeons here on the screen. The second method, which is just going to be, if you are now on your second or your third character and you just want to level them up quickly to kind of get yourself into that mid game to late game as fast as possible, it's going to take a little bit more setup, as what we're going to do is immediately start going for very good gear. And while we're doing this, we're also going to be able to get a very nice cash stack for ourselves, which will allow us to buy potions, which will not only increase our survivability, but also our DPS output. So let's just jump right into showing you how we're going to be farming for gear and gold. So we're going to be jumping into the Festering Bog on Nightmare difficulty. Reason we're coming here is there's an NPC, Crick, who is going to give us a quest, and that quest gives us Crick's Treasure Finder. This treasure finder now allows Crick's chest to spawn. Crick's chest will always drop you the highest quality of item based off the dungeon and difficulty that you're on. And since we're on Nightmare, we will always get eternal tiered gear. So if we run over to this left side here, you will see that we have a Crick's chest, which we can now open, getting this eternal gear. Now the gear that it drops won't be for your class, it will just be random gear in general, so it might take a little bit to get the gear that you're looking for. So you can run over and grab this chest. You can also run up here and grab this checkpoint, as we'll be able to reset from town and grab that chest. Now, if you're any class but Rogue, as Rogue does have invisibility, it might be a little tough and might take a few tries as you might die. Alternatively, you can also run over to this chest just over here. Now this chest is a bit more difficult to grab than that first chest, so rogues will have an easy time. If you find you're dying a lot getting to this chest, then you can just stay farming that first chest. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that these Crix chests can actually bug, where they either don't spawn or they spawn halfway and you can't open them. And I'm going to show you a quick fix to actually fix them. So once you spawn in, if you run over to the chest too quickly, you can either stay at that position where you just spawned in for a second, or if you just run into the map a little bit, the chest will actually spawn. Then you can grab that one and you can run over back over here. One thing to keep in mind too is the gear that is dropped from Crix chest will scale to your level. So at level 1, we're only ever going to get level 1 gear out of this chest. But if we're level 7, we'll get level 7 gear and etc. So let's actually talk about what kind of gear we're going to be looking for from these chests. So it's really going to depend on your class. If you are a melee class like Champion and Rogue, you want melee power. Range power is going to be for Ranger, and then spell power is going to be for Cleric and Wizard. Okay, so with that, we don't actually need to farm an entire set of gear. The main pieces of gear that we're looking to get are going to be weapons, as those are going to be by far the best DPS increase you can get from gear, as well as helm and shoulders. Obviously, if you get some trinkets or replacing your green gear, that's totally fine. And with this gear, don't worry so much about the stats besides the melee power. The other stats really don't have that much of an effect on our DPS at this stage of the game. Okay, so now with all this extra gear that we're getting that we don't need, let's just say all of this was trash and it wasn't useful for our class, what we're going to do is we're going to salvage it so we can make some money. So we're going to head over to the blacksmith, talk to him, and go over to salvage here. Click on select, you can just hit select all and it'll highlight all of this gear. Then we can salvage the selected and it'll give us these eternal essences. Now these essences do have a few different uses, but the one we're going to talk about is selling them for gold. As you can see, each one of these essences are worth 1 platinum, which is the highest currency you can receive. So we're going to go over and we're just going to sell those essences, giving us 10 platinum. So now that we've, built up an early cash stack, what we're going to be spending it on is potions. So if you come over to the ivory tower here, you're going to talk to this NPC, and we're going to be looking to buy first and foremost rejuvenation potions. We're looking to get 1 to 2 full stacks of these potions, as they are incredibly strong at keeping us alive. Restores 35% of your maximum health, and then an additional 35% over 8 seconds. But over those 8 seconds, you'll get that 35% max health 4 times. So it'll keep you alive very, very easily. And then secondly, we're going to look to buy a potion depending on your class. So if you're Rogue and Champion, you want these Elixirs of Strength, as it's just 35% increase to your melee power. If you're Ranger, you're going to want to buy these range power pots, and Cleric and Wizard want these spell power pots. So we'll just buy a quick stack of those. And then for survivability, we're going to hop over into the inn here and talk to Lena. Lena will sell 2 very useful potions. One will increase our magic resistance by 10%, and the other will increase our armor by 35%, both for 15 minutes. Now these potions don't stack, so you can either have magic resistance or armor. The more important one at this stage of the game is going to be armor for sure. This is just going to help us stay alive. as we're going to be farming dungeons on Nightmare difficulty. Um, so the dungeon we're going to be looking to farm is going to be the Crypts of Horror on Nightmare. Reason we're going on to Nightmare difficulty right away is because the dungeons scale to your level. So even though we're on Nightmare difficulty, all of the mobs we're going to be killing will only be level 1. Um, and then as we level up, we're just going to be killing the basic mobs at the start of the dungeon, as we do get quite a big XP multiplier. And then as we level up and we gain more skills, we're going to be looking for the skills that do AoE damage. As once we can start to do AoE damage, we can actually hop back into the Festering Bog onto hard difficulty, as these mobs do hit really hard, so we don't want to go into Nightmare, and they also will have way too much HP. Now obviously I won't be able to kill these mobs as I don't have any gear equipped and I don't have my AoE abilities on, but what we're going to be looking to do is just to make sure you equip your potions. So you have your power potion on, you have your armor potion on, and you're going to be look to grouping them up and just spamming your AoE abilities on the hordes, slowly killing them, and the XP you'll get from this is much better than if we're just killing 1 to 2 mobs on Nightmare difficulty on crypts. One thing to keep in mind, I know it's obvious, but try not to get hit by these mobs especially. As you can see, I'll try and take one hit here without dying. We will get a debuff, that little red teardrop right above our HP. It is a stacking bleed that, if it stacks up enough, can just kill you. It is very strong, so it's very important to just keep your distance from these mobs and not allow them to hit you. One more thing we're going to touch on is actually upgrading your abilities. So as you level up, you will automatically unlock abilities. And if you come over to the guild house here, talk to the NPC that is appropriate for your class. So as rogue, we're going to talk to the rogue trainer, and here we can actually upgrade all of our abilities, which will give it a pretty decent damage increase. So it's important as we're leveling to come back here every so often and just make sure that we're upgrading our skills. It's also important to keep in mind that as we're leveling and the mobs are getting stronger, you'll start to notice that your DPS in the dungeon is going to start falling off. So there's no magical number for this, but as you feel that you're taking a lot longer to kill the mobs, you're going to want to hop right back into the Festering Bog, getting those Crix chests, as like I said, those chests do scale to your level, and re-upgrading your gear so that you can keep your DPS relevant against the mobs. So that's pretty much going to be it from leveling from 1 to 20. It should be, somewhat fast. I don't know exactly how long it will take you, maybe a couple hours to go from 1 to 20. And then once we do hit 20, we will start getting into things such as Heroism points. Okay, so getting into Heroism, we're going to talk about pretty much where to spend your points. Now, I don't know the mathematically correct way to spend your points, but I'm just going to show you how I tend to spend them on all classes. So first off, we get Heroism points every level after level 20, capping out at 1,000 points. So getting into it, on every class, I start off on either Armor Pen or Spell Pen. If you're Rogue Champion or Ranger, take Armor. If you're Wizard or Cleric, take Spell Pen. Then, generally from there, if I'm a melee class or Ranger, I will take this, as it just increases your basic attacks damage by 15%, and then I go into physical damage for another 10% damage, as this just adds very consistent damage. And then from there, after getting those three, you can go into crit chance and crit damage. Now, generally, after I get Armor Pen and my basic attack, I usually go into movement speed, just because this is now at the point where we're farming bosses, we're farming a lot of dungeons, so we just want to be able to move through those very quickly. So you can take this early if you want, or you can wait after you get the crit chance and crit damage to get this. And then from here, you can just look to kind of round out your damage so you can max out the power here. I don't like to get it too early because it's a lot to invest. It's 100 points, and it doesn't give you as much damage as you think. From there, we can get something like attack speed and maybe even leveling up our skills that add damage. I wouldn't worry too much about the utility for now. And then you can come into something like the defensive stats. I like to get DPS first, just because killing things faster is going to help with us farming and getting gear faster, leveling faster. And so I like to start off with cooldown reduction into health, and then probably armor. Armor I find is more useful through most dungeons that we're going to be farming, but you can, if you need it, swap in a resistance. And don't forget, you can respec heroism points at any time totally for free. It costs nothing. So if you want to change up your build, you can do it at any time. And then so once I get basically these four, then I look to just kind of round everything out. So I want to talk about this tab very quickly and what class utilizes what. So Rogue is going to be physical and void damage. Champion is physical and fire. Ranger, physical nature. Wizard is going to be fire and void damage. And Cleric is going to be, I believe it's physical damage, but holy damage for sure. I wouldn't worry too much about deflection and glancing blow. That's just to deal with crits and stuff that you're receiving. And then yeah, basically as you level up, once you get kind of the ones that we talked about, you can just look to round everything out. At max level, you'll be able to max out the top 2 trees, everything except for one in this tree, and then the 2 elements relevant to your class on this tree. So you'll be able to basically get everything you'll want. But yeah, that's pretty much it for heroism points. Again, if you need to change up your build, feel free to respec, but for now, let's move on. Let's talk about movement mechanics in Dungeons of Sundaria. So there are going to be 2 main mechanics that we're going to utilize in order to get through the dungeons as quickly as possible so that we can farm our gear very, very fast. So the first one is going to be bouncing. Bouncing is essentially when you jump roll into the corner of 2 objects to essentially bounce very high into the sky, and it's going to look like this. One thing to keep in mind is negating fall damage. So as you can see, I roll just before hitting the ground, and that completely negates fall damage in the game. The second thing you may also notice when you go to try this is you're not getting anywhere near the same amount of height that I am. One thing that we have found is that the height you get off bounces is completely tied to the frame rate you have. So you can see right here that I have 60 frames, and before I was over 200 consistently, that I'm not getting anywhere near the same amount of height. So if you're just finding that you're not getting as high, just try turning off your VSync, and I think you can change your FPS settings in Steam itself. So we'll just go ahead and turn VSync back off, and then get into the second movement mechanic, which is potion rolling. Potion rolling is great for just covering a large amount of distance. Essentially what it is when you jump roll, if you use a potion immediately after rolling, you will send yourself flying just like that. And you'll also notice that when I hit the ground, if you jump at a pretty precise timing, you can carry that momentum forward with the jump. Now that is kind of hard to do, as the timing, like I said, is pretty precise to hit that, but it's always worth trying, and you can't just spam the jump key, you have to actually hit it within that small window. And then being able to combine these 2 mechanics, we can cover an insane amount of distance. So if we bounce here and then use a potion roll, you can see just how far we get off of one jump. And then with potion rolling, it is significantly easier to do if you're jumping off an elevated surface like this. It is a lot easier than if you're on flat ground. Now it is still possible to do on flat ground, it just requires a more precise timing. So when you're doing it on flat ground, when you jump, you want to roll not at the peak of your jump, but basically as soon as you begin to drop. So as soon as you begin to drop, you're going to roll and immediately pop a potion, and it'll allow you to do this on flat ground. It just makes traversing through the dungeon that much faster. So we're going to get into the gearing post 20, as well as I'm going to be showing you how to actually utilize these bounces and potion rolls to be able to get through these dungeons extremely quickly. So one thing I wanted to quickly touch on before actually moving on was the difference between movement in a two-handed and one-handed weapons. So with a one-handed weapon, you can see, just like potion rolling, we're able to jump right after landing to carry our momentum so that we can move even faster, and it's very, very smooth. But if we hop over to a two-handed weapon, you can see how we start losing momentum from the second we start rolling, and it's just not as smooth, nor it's as fast. So something I like to do even on a ranger is just having a swap to a one-handed weapon. That way I can move throughout the dungeon, and then when I need to fight bosses or kill mobs, I swap over to my two-handed weapon so that I can actually start dealing with those. But yeah, I figured we'd just go over that very quickly before hopping into our next section. Okay, so let's show you how you're actually going to craft your set. So this is going to be for crafting your tier 1, your tier 2, and your tier 3 sets, which we will get into just after this. I first want to talk about the rating system, or the tiers that you can see on gear. So you can see, hovering over this helm here, on the left you have what the current equipped piece of gear's tier is, and on the right you have the gear that you are hovering. So this helmet here is tier 1, and the helmet that I'm wearing is tier 5. So at level 20, all gear that you're getting will have this tier system. It will range from 0 stars all the way to 5, 5 obviously being the best. So with the gear that you're crafting, I wouldn't worry too much about this, as the main thing that we do care about is the actual set bonuses that we will be getting from the gear. So in some cases, it's going to be better to equip a tier 1 piece of gear over even a tier, 4 or 5, assuming that equipping that piece will give you a set bonus. Okay, and we will be able to upgrade the gear. So if you craft a piece of gear that's only 1 star, you will be able to upgrade this to higher tiers, which I will show you in just a second. So first off, we're going to talk to the blacksmith. You want to go into the buy tab here at the top, and you can see we have all these different recipes that require fragments. So you're going to get all of these fragments just from farming dungeons. The main ones that we care about, or going to relate to our tier 1 set, our tier 2 set, or tier 3 set. So basically you're just going to spend the fragments that you earn from farming dungeons to buy the recipe. Then once we do actually have the recipe, we're just going into the craft system here, and as you can see, these are all the recipes that I've actually bought with fragments. So we're just going to pick one randomly. Let's just say the Boots of Exile, for example. It's going to bring us to this screen where if you scroll through, you can see what tier we can actually craft it at. Now with all gear that we're going to be crafting, more than likely we're going to want to craft the eternal version of the gear. And then down here in the crafting outcomes, you can see we have a 50% chance for epic, 40% chance of legendary, and a 10% chance for eternal. And this is going to cost us 12 eternal essence. But don't make the same mistake that I did, because when I first started playing, I kept trying to just craft it, hoping for that 10% at Eternal, not realizing that this here is actually a slider bar. So we can increase the amount of Eternal Essence that we're going to spend, but we can also increase the chance to get an Eternal piece of gear. So if you slide this all the way to the right, it's now going to cost us 40 Eternal Essence, but we're going to have a 100% chance at this piece being an Eternal piece of gear. So once you have the piece of gear that you want to craft, you're just going to go down, click craft. It's going to take a moment, and then it's going to pop up with the piece of gear that we've actually crafted. So you can see that we actually crafted a tier 4 piece of gear. Now the tier that you crafted at will be random, but the higher level you are, the better chance you have of getting a higher tiered piece of gear. I wouldn't really worry too much. Like I said, we will be able to upgrade these. So if you find a piece of gear that has really, really good stats that you want, I would say, you know, keep it as we can upgrade it. So now that we have our piece of gear here, right there, we're able to go to this NPC here, Dora, talk to her, and this is actually how we're going to be upgrading the gear. So you can see once we click on it, it'll bring us to this screen showing us all the stat increases when we upgrade it to tier 5 and how much it's actually going to cost. So it's going to cost us 300 Eternal Essence, 3 Magical Cores, and 25 Platinum. So upgrading in this game is actually pretty expensive, especially if we're trying to get things all the way from tier 0 or tier 1 all the way up to tier 5. Which is generally why I don't look to upgrade my gear until I get my tier 3 set, as trying to upgrade my tier 1, my tier 2, and tier 3 is really expensive and requires quite a bit of grinding. So yeah, generally I wait until I'm in tier 3. Now if you have tier 2 armor sets, and you know, you just want a little bit more DPS, maybe a little bit more survivability, you can go ahead and upgrade some of your gear, especially if you have pieces that are, you know, tier 1 to 2. Getting your gear up to tier 3 is actually a pretty decent upgrade and will help quite a bit, so that might be something that's worth doing. These magical cores here, there is actually a very easy way to get them, especially once you start grinding for your tier 3 sets in Ragewind. There are 2 bosses that will drop keys, and then further on in the dungeon there will be a treasure room. This treasure room will guarantee drop 10 magical cores. So that's farming Ragewind is a great way to get these magical cores. You'll also get a bunch of Eternal Essence from those chests, as well as a good amount of money. So just through farming your tier 3 sets, you will be able to get all 3 of these materials in order to upgrade your gear. One thing that I do want to touch on with crafting gear is we will only ever be able to get 7 bonuses on our gear. So when you're farming, and I would say more specifically just for tier 3, you'll notice that certain bosses will drop specific pieces of those sets. And those set pieces actually do have a chance at having more than 7 bonuses. So let me see if I can find a piece of gear here. Ah, yes, something like this. So you can see that we have about 9 bonuses on this piece of gear. This is only possible from gear dropped from bosses. So when you're farming the bosses, take note of what pieces of gear they actually drop, as you're gonna want to try and maybe not craft those pieces of gears and rely more off getting it off the bosses, because 9 bonuses isn't even the most. I think it can go upwards of 10 to 12. I could be wrong on the higher end of that, but 10 for sure. So there will be some pieces of gear that you have no choice and you have to craft them, as no boss will drop it, but then other pieces of gear that we absolutely can get from bosses like this as well, having more than 7 bonuses. So that's something to keep in mind. You don't want all of your gear to be crafted. In fact, you want as much of it as possible to come from bosses, and then just filling out the rest through crafting. You can definitely like craft your full set and then start to replace it with the gear that you're getting from bosses. As you see, you get a better version, because it is going to be very RNG dependent on what actual stats you get on the gear. It's a lot easier to just mass craft, let's just say, a chest piece and get all of the bonuses that you're going to want on that chest piece, rather than trying to farm that same boss, you know, 10, 20, 30 times. So it's definitely worth still crafting a bunch of your sets, and then trying to replace it later on with pieces that you're farming from the boss. Okay, so now I know I've mentioned the tier sets multiple times throughout this video, so it's finally time to show you where we're going to be farming gear post 20. So as soon as we hit level 20, first thing I like to do, head back into the Festering Bog and farm those Cric's chests. Upgrading your gear to level 20 will be quite a bit of an upgrade, especially now that the star rating has been introduced to gear. Now, more than likely, you're going to find gear with relatively low tiers, but it's totally fine. It's still going to be a nice upgrade from the gear we have. Um, at this point, if you want, you can look to farm and round out more of your gear to be level 20, as it's just going to help increase the farm speed for everything we're going to do. So, each class in the game has 3 tier sets. Tier 1 being the weakest and Tier 3 generally being the strongest for every class. So we're going to not go over what each tier set does for every class. I'm actually going to leave some links down in the description to some videos that Chonky did. He does a really good job explaining in depth what each set bonus does for each class, for their armor set as well as their weapon set, from the tier 1 sets all the way to the tier 3 sets, as it would take quite a bit of time to explain what every single set does. So instead, I'm just going to show you where and how to actually farm those. So the tier 1 set for every class is going to come from the grasslands. Now I'm going to have some footage playing that's just going to show you the exact route that I do. So something to keep in mind for this dungeon is we could absolutely go ahead and just do full runs of the dungeon, as some of the bosses actually do drop pieces for our tier 1 set. I generally just like to farm the fragments for these sets so that I can craft them myself, as I find it takes longer to do full runs to get the entire set than it does to just farm the bosses you're seeing me farm, as the checkpoint that we're going to get is going to be right in front of that first boss, and then as soon as we beat that 5th boss, we can just reset back to town and end up right at that checkpoint in front of that first boss, ready to farm all 5 again. And you don't have to do that many runs either, as we're not looking to craft all 8 pieces of the set. We're only looking to craft 6, as 6 pieces is all we're going to need to get the full set bonus, and then also farming for the full tier 1 weapon set as well. Okay, so getting into our tier 2 and tier 3 sets for each class. With tier 2, we have 2 different dungeons that we can farm. So we can either farm DreadForge or Icy Depths. I personally like to farm DreadForge. I think it's just faster to farm. I enjoy farming it more. The difference between these two is once we get into tier 2 and tier 3 sets, we now have 2 options when it comes to our weapon sets. Okay, so in tier 1 we only had 1 weapon set that we could get for our class, but now we can get 2. So one of those sets will come from DreadForge and the other will come from Icy Depths. Generally, the only classes I found that I was farming the depths with was Champion and Cleric, as I feel they operate much better with 2-handed weapons, especially Champion, where Champion's 1-handed weapons, the abilities can sometimes be bugged, like the hitboxes where you're just not hitting, you feel like you're not doing very much damage, so I just always opt to go for the 2-handed weapons. So I'm going to be showing you an in-depth run on DreadForge, how to farm it, how to get through the map quickly, how to do skips. This is now where we're going to be taking advantage of those bounces and potion rolls that I showed you early on in the video. I'm also going to be taking you through the Icy Depths as well. Again, I'm going to be showing you how to skip sections, how to just get through the map quickly and get to the bosses that we want to farm. So for myself, I just like to farm the last 2 bosses of this dungeon because I just want the weapon fragments. I don't care so much about the armor fragments. If I'm going to farm them, I usually just farm them from DreadForge anyway. But you absolutely can farm your armor set from here if you're already farming the weapon set, so that's no issue whatsoever. And then with tier 3, we're going to be hopping into Ragewind. Now, I'm not going to show you how to do runs of Ragewind, as Ragewind is basically a dungeon where you want to kill pretty much every boss. Every boss is going to drop you something useful, whether it's fragments or keys to open up a treasure room later in the dungeon. What I am going to do, however, is I'm going to quickly run you through the dungeon, just giving you tips and things to watch out for on bosses. I'll show you what bosses to skip. This way you can just have a bit of an easier time, as Ragewind is actually a really hard dungeon The bosses now have quite a bit of health, and they also do a lot of damage. You will find yourself getting one shot in Ragewind, more so than every other dungeon. So I'm just going to kind of give you some tips and key points to just help you navigate throughout the dungeon. Okay, so let's get into the actual farming route for DreadForge. Now, this route is a lot more complex than the Grasslands route. As the Grasslands route, there was no skips or tricks required. It was just run to the boss and kill them. This one is where we're actually going to start utilizing our bounces and potion rolls to navigate this map very, very quickly. So right off the start, we're going to be using potion rolls to get down this hill as quickly as possible. Coming up as well will be a series of bounces and potion rolls that we're going to use in order to skip the first two bosses, as they are completely useless in terms of the items they drop if we're looking to farm gear. And they just take a little while, especially only having tier 1 gear to actually kill. So what you're going to do is, once you hit this checkpoint here, instead of going the intended route, which is up to the left here, we're going to veer off to the right and find this little nook. Now, one thing to keep in mind with bounces, when you get launched up into the air, your roll direction gets locked, which means you will only roll in a straight line. So in order to get rid of that and to essentially unlock our roll direction so we can roll freely, we need to use a very specific skill in order to allow us to change our roll direction. Now, I'm going to put the names of all the skills up on the screen for every single class. The unfortunate part is Cleric actually doesn't have a skill that allows them to change their roll direction. However, this is still very possible on Cleric. It's just going to be slower compared to every other class, but still significantly faster than trying to kill the first two bosses in this dungeon. So, walk up to this corner, do a roll, and then as you see, I'm going to use my tomahawks, which for rogue is the skill that allows us to change direction, and we're going to land on this platform here. Doesn't matter if we quite land on it as we're going down here. Clerics just have to use that bounce and kind of climbing this mountain, come back down this way. So now once we get here, this bounce is going to look very scary, but I promise you everything I'm going to show you on this map is doable on a fresh level 1 character with 0% movement speed bonuses, as this is part of the route for the level 1 speedrun. So we're going to walk up to this corner here and do another bounce. So from here, we're looking to get on either the corner of this roof or somewhere over there. Generally, I like to land on this roof. It's a little bit safer, I think. Rolling will stop your momentum forward and just give you regular speed. So once you get relatively where you want to go, you can just roll. And then from here, we're going to do another potion roll onto this roof. And then we're going to look to clip back into the map. Now, from here, the boss we want to kill is down this way. We are going to head up this way first so we can grab the checkpoint. So in case we die, we don't have to do everything we just did. So we're going to look to come somewhere into this corner where we can just drop in and just keep fiddling around there until you actually fall in, because it can be a little wonky. So we're gonna run back up here and grab this checkpoint quickly so that now if we do die, we don't have to do all those jumps again. And then we're going to backtrack over to this boss to the right here. Now, I am on normal difficulty just to make these boss fights quick, but you will be on nightmare difficulty. So we're just going to kill this boss, and then instead of running all the way back to where we were, we're just going to go ahead and reset from our last checkpoint, and it'll bring us all the way right here, saving a bunch of time. Now, once we're in this room, we're going to go ahead and run straight and kill the boss up on that staircase. Now, mind you, when you do reset checkpoints, you do actually lose any potion buffs you have on. So make sure to reapply your power pots as well as any armor or magic resist potions. So once these two bosses are dead, we actually don't want to kill these two bosses, but we have to kill them in order to get into this room. This room will have a boss that we will need to kill that drops fragments. So we'll kill this boss here and then just run back and collect the chest that boss drops, which is this chest here. So make sure you grab this one, and the boss we killed before, make sure you grab that chest as well. So now we're going to run all the way back this way to that first boss we killed in this room. Now there is another way to completely skip this room, but I would just say go this way. So now we're going to pretty much aim for here. So we're going to roll down like this, pop a potion, and then just come through this door. Now if this boss detects us, he'll put up a fog gate and we won't be able to get through. So make sure we don't get detected by this boss. From here, we're just going to drop all the way down. Oh, and I messed up. Oh, no, we're fine. And we're going to go and kill these two bosses here. Okay. Once we kill these two bosses, make sure you grab the chest. I can't actually remember if these two bosses drop the fragments we need, but if we don't, then you can very easily get through this door without them detecting you. Then we're going to move on to the next boss here, just in this room. This boss is also skippable, but I believe this boss will also drop the fragments that we need to farm gear. So we're just going to kill him, collect the chest, and move on to the next boss here. Now if you do not want to get CC'd by this boss, you can pop a Crix pot. You can buy Crix pots, which just make you immune from all CC for 8 seconds from Crick in the Festering Bog, the same NPC that we got the Crix treasure finder from. So now we're going to clip back out of the map, as the next section of the map is actually kind of annoying to do. So this is the door we entered from. You want to come to the top right corner of the map and then find the corner. You'll find an invisible wall and you want to find the corner. Then from here, I'm just going to pop a potion so I don't die. You're going to want to roll and jump. Now sometimes you will launch yourself quite far and high. So if you do, why am I not going through? Oh, okay, we're alive, we're fine. So we're going to clip back out onto this section of the map, completely skipping all of this. From here, we're going to do a potion jump onto this. Jump up. Now this, you have two options. You can either do the longer way, which the room we want to get into is on this corner, so on this wall. So you can just do a potion jump to that wall, fall all the way down, and the door will be right there. Second, you can actually skip this whole section if you come down here. Now this one is a bit tricky, so I might not even get it. You jump all the way up and then do a roll, use your ability to change roll direction, and then a potion roll all the way over here, collecting a checkpoint. So we're just skipping this room right here, which can be a bit annoying, as well as that whole series of like stairs. That one can be a little bit difficult, so if you find it easier to just run through that section you just skipped, that's totally fine. You're still saving so much time by not doing that whole other section after the dragon. So from here, I'm just going to kill these NPCs because they're a little bit annoying right now. There are two ways to skip this boss. Oh my goodness. Flameman's not dying. So we can either do another bounce here and skip it, which I'm just going to not allow myself to do, just so I can demonstrate. So we can go from there and skip it there. Okay, so I lied to you. You want to stand a bit further down on the pile, and you're just jumping right into this corner. It'll launch you right up and right through here, collecting our next checkpoint, as we don't actually want to kill that boss. Then you're going to move up here, and you're going to kill the final two bosses. Now, like I said before, you will have fragments for armor set and a weapon set. So starting with this boss, it will drop the first fragments for the weapon set. So what we want to do with this boss is immediately run to one side and kill it until it goes into this bubble, and then this way we can stand on the other side of the arena, not having to worry about taking any damage. Now this boss will do this twice. Once it's done this, it will run back over to us on this side, and we will do the exact same thing where we wait for it to go in this bubble and run back to the other side. Now, this boss is bugged. I'm going to try not to kill it so it goes into that phase. There we go. This boss is bugged, and when you do get it to low enough HP, as you see, a second one will spawn. Now, generally, you won't have to fight it as this is going on, but because this is normal and I do a lot of damage, it will spawn. So you will have to kill this one. Now, this one won't go through the same phases as this one with a bubble. It will just be fight it and kill it. So then now we will finally kill this boss, have the chest spawn, which will drop us the weapon fragments we need to craft our tier 2 weapon set, and then we will run off to the final boss. Now sometimes this final boss can bug and it won't spawn. Very easy fix, just reset to the last checkpoint, and as you can see we actually did get the bug where the boss didn't spawn. So very easy fix. That's actually the one time I want to see that bug, is just to go to last checkpoint and then run back and the boss should be there. And then finally we will kill this boss. Okay, or not. Boss. But yes, we this boss will have a chance to drop one of your tier 2 weapons, as well as weapon fragments. So for each run you will get 6 weapon fragments, so it should take you about 9 full runs to get to craft your second tier 2 weapon. You don't have to craft both, just craft the one that the boss does not drop you. And that is pretty much it for this dungeon. I know it's a bit more complex and a little hard, but once you get the hang of it, it's really going to speed up the runs, especially because you're going to have to do about 10 runs. And you will get to the point where you actually don't need any more armor fragments, and the only bosses you're actually going to have to kill are the last 2, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 bosses in the middle of the dungeon. So that's pretty much it, and that should help speed up your runs by quite a bit. So I'm now going to show you how to actually get through the icy depths very quickly, just to get to the end, to get to the bosses we need. But first, I want to talk about this NPC over here. As if you talk to them on Nightmare difficulty, they will give you a quest to go locate a sigil, and then when you turn in the quest, they will actually upgrade your basic attack to level 4, giving it some extra damage, which is really nice. So I'm going to put on screen here a map. So what you're going to do is you're just going to run through the dungeon as normal. We're looking for boss number 6 here, which is Yagrim the Flayer. So we're going to have to kill High Summoner Gabriella, and then run past. We will probably also have to kill Blacksmith Oppenhauser, as if we don't, he's just going to follow us to Yagrim the Flayer. And so if you don't want to fight both, make sure you kill him first and then run up. Once you kill Yagrim, make sure you loot his chest. His chest will drop you the Sigil of Triumph. Then you want to bring that sigil back here to this NPC, turn it in, and your basic attack will then get upgraded to level 4. Okay, so hopping right into it, what we're going to want to do is immediately off the start, we're going to run over here to the left. So we're just going to run up past these banks, and we're going to look to go over to these rocks. Now all you have to do is just do a bounce here, get yourself a lot of height. If you don't get enough height, you can go over to the left here, but since we do, we're going to just use a potion roll and go right over this way. And what we're looking to get to is those series of icebergs that you kind of saw in the background. So doing this skip will actually allow us to skip the first 7 bosses of the dungeon. Also make sure that we're rolling before we hit the ground, as we don't want to die off those first couple jumps. Now that we're down here, we can try and bounce off the ground as we're going, just to speed things up. As again, we're only trying to look to farm, the last 2 dungeon bosses, as they will be the ones giving us weapon fragments. If you do want to farm armor fragments here instead of DreadForge, then just go through the dungeon normally. So once we're here, we're going to hop over over. We're going to be on an invisible floor, so it is very safe to land here. Then we're going to just want to start walking over here. We want to start rolling. If you want, you can just land on this right here. We did get a little stuck, that's okay. No problem. And then we're just going to want to hop into the water here. Make sure right as you hit the water, you roll too. It will just save a bit of time as you will stop your momentum from going in the water. Here we will reach a checkpoint. So now that we're here, we've actually skipped the first 7 dungeon bosses, and then we can just run through, do a potion roll to quickly get over here, and then we will hit another checkpoint here as well. And then from here, this part can actually pretty easily be skipped. So what we're going to do is just another potion roll over. Okay. I got a little stuck on something, no problem. So we're gonna do a potion roll over here, climb up this ladder, run over. We're going to collect another checkpoint here, and now we're going to do something pretty cool. So from here, we're just going to potion roll at that wall, and when we do, we're going to collect a checkpoint. And if you're quick enough, you can actually reset to the checkpoint before you die, and then it will take us to that area. So we're just going to potion roll. As soon as we see that we've reached the checkpoint down in the text box to the left here, we're just then going to reset, and it's going to take us all the way over here as we jumped from over there. Then we're going to continue running down, coming down this way. I shouldn't have quite potion rolled. So you can either run normally down these tracks here, or you can do another potion roll to get to this ledge here. And if you just walk into this corner right beside the minecarts, you can see we actually got another checkpoint. So we can reset from last checkpoint, taking us here, run up the ladder. Now from this point, if you want to, you can just run through, kill this boss, and do the dungeon as you normally would. If you want to skip these bosses, we're going to do another skip here. So with this one, you want to line yourself, and you don't want to put yourself as far as you can into the corner. You actually want to take a little bit of a step back. Not much, just a little one. And then if you just jump and roll, you'll launch yourself up. Now we messed it up just a little bit, but that's okay. I'm just going to reset from last checkpoint here. As you can get yourself unstuck from there, but it can be a little bit of a pain sometimes. So again, you're just going to take a little bit of a step back, jump up, and then you will launch yourself up here. We're then looking to run around here. We're going to go around some of these invisible walls, and then we can get ourselves on this very interesting platform with this kind of JPEG looking thing. From here, we're looking to aim to hit the top of this. This has no collision, so we're able to clip back into the map here, collecting another checkpoint when we reach here. And this is basically just the bottom part. So we were just up there. There was like 1 or 2 bosses we had to kill. And now here we can actually skip this boss. It is really hard to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to potion roll towards the door, and right when we hit the ground, we have to do that precise timing of jumping to try and keep our full momentum. Now it's really hard to do. More than likely you won't actually get it. Didn't know we could get aggroed, but more than likely you will not actually get it. So I wouldn't worry too much if you don't, as it, like I said, it's just a really hard thing to do. So I'm going to try and get it here. So we do actually get it, but you can see just how close it was, even with a perfect jump. If not, I'm going to show one trick that rogues can do to actually bypass this. They're the only class that can do this, as you need invisibility. Every class, if you mess it up, you will just have to kill the boss. I mean, you can keep trying, but it is quite a pain. So let's just say I don't make it through. For rogues, I believe if you just come down here, you're just waiting for the bosses to reset their position, and then you can just come through and get through the door. Now, every other class will have to kill this boss. Luckily, Rogue can just bypass this boss without being detected. And then we're going to run up. Now, again, from here, you can just run the dungeon as intended, killing the bosses along the way, as this next trick is actually kind of difficult and a little bit scary to do, so it's probably recommended to just go ahead, kill the bosses, and progress as normal, as we are actually closing in near the end of the dungeon. But this trick, if you want to just skip this boss and get right to the next area, if you come up to here, you don't have to go against it, you just have to roll and jump into it, and you will clip over onto the other side. And then we're just going to run through these rocks. It's going to be a little bit hard to see, but then you're looking for kind of this formation here, this kind of lip, where we can actually clip through the wall. We're then just going to stay with the wall, with the invisible floor. Once you get here, you're going to jump and roll to this formation. Once you get here, you're going to want to kind of look down here, and I'm just going to go invisible, so maybe it's better if I stay. But you're just going to want to look down a little bit, jump and roll, launch yourself, and then you can look to get over here. Ideally, we would get up on top of there, but sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get all the way up there. So we're just going to look to get up here. And unfortunately, I don't have Tomahawk, so that was kind of bad timing by me. But we're just going to look to get up here. Now, this rooftop can be a little bit difficult to walk on with the invisible walls and things are bumping. But basically, we're looking for all of those icicles in the ground. We're looking for a specific set. If you do get to this point, do not run here. Just do a potion jump across, as there is a section where you can get stuck and slide down. It's quite a pain. So what we're doing is we're looking for just past these series of icicles. Oh, I kind of messed up. That's fine. But we're looking for just past these series of like icicles for this formation right here. And if you just walk into it, you can actually clip right back in. And then I would recommend walking up these stairs. We do want to go this way, but I would just go up these stairs to collect the checkpoint. Now, like I said, everything we just did there is kind of unnecessary, and you don't have to do it. You can just run through the dungeon as normally, kill the boss, and then you'll end up through here. From here is where we're going to kill the final two bosses. So you're just going to run across all this. Run past all these. And now I am on normal difficulty, so I won't get the fragments, but you will. It should be for your alternative weapon set, the two-handed weapon set if you're Cleric or Champion. So we'll just enter the room and run up these stairs. Then yeah, we're going to come in and just kill the bosses. Like I said, I'm only on normal difficulty, so these bosses are going to be really easy to kill. Now, there is technically a way to skip this boss, but it's really hard and complex to do. As messing it up, you will either just die or get yourself stuck, so it's not worth it. Plus, you probably do want to kill this boss just for the fragments, but again, I'm on normal, so I won't actually get the fragments needed. I just wanted to be able to kill these quickly. So you're just going to have to kill these three bosses, and then I believe this should open up, and then you can kill this boss here. There we go. There we go. Then just loot the chest. Then you're just going to fall down a few series of stairs, or I guess ladders. And then fight the final boss here and kill him. And that's pretty much it for Icy Depths. Especially, I generally don't like farming it for the tier 2 armor set. I much prefer DreadForge to farm rather than this. This is just if you do want to farm your alternative weapon set, this is where you would want to go to do it. And it's just going to be these final couple bosses that are going to give you the fragments needed. And I believe the final boss of this dungeon has a chance at dropping a weapon as well. So now, with all that being done, let's move into the final dungeon of Ragewind. So instead of doing a full in-depth guide like DreadForge and Icy Death, I'm just going to give you a few key things to keep in mind with each boss during this dungeon. So the first boss is pretty simple. He's going to put down a purple circle that you will need to stand inside once you hear this voice line.
You dare challenge him? I shall bring you to your knees!
So the second boss of the dungeon, important to kill as it will drop a key which becomes much more useful later on in the dungeon. So start off, you can kill all of these extra mobs. This way they're not attacking you during the fight. And the only thing you really have to worry about with this boss is not getting hit by the blizzard attack that it uses. Once you get to this boss, you can just skip it. It actually doesn't drop anything we need, but I am going to show you a cool little bounce that we can do to save quite a bit of time. We just don't have to run all the way to the other side, and we can skip a lot of running. So if you just line up in between these two rocks and do a jump roll into them, we can just launch up here, saving us from having to do quite a bit of running just along those webs to the other side and all the way back. Now this boss is probably one of the hardest bosses in the dungeon in my opinion. It just does a lot of damage and can one-shot you. So what I like to do is I like to try and clear out the area of any mobs running through. So all these ones to the right here. You can even go to the left side of the boss room and clear out the mobs. But basically the gist of this boss is you're going to want to kite it, and you're going to want to keep it away from the platform that it's currently standing on. As if you die when you're away from that platform, the boss will slowly walk back there and its HP will not reset. But if it's close enough and it makes it back to that platform, then its HP will reset. So you do actually get a lot of tries to kill this boss as long as when you're dying is not near that platform. So that's really it. It's going to do some charge moves, summon tornadoes. Just make sure you're kiting the boss, running away, and trying your best not to die, but you're more than likely going to die on this boss. So this for me is actually one of the easier bosses in the dungeon. It's basically going to just pull you in. When it does, make sure you have a health potion popped, and make sure when you see your health drop that you're complementing your health pot with your class's heal ability. It's also going to summon some mobs. Make sure you kill those, as those can do quite a bit of damage. This is a good boss to have magic resist on, but other than that, it's a pretty straightforward boss. This next boss isn't too hard as long as you have the Crick's potions that you can buy from Crick in the Festering Bog, the same place that we got the treasure finder from. Crick's potions are just going to allow us to be immune to crowd control besides knockups for 8 seconds. These bosses are going to do a lot of CC between the both of them, so constantly popping a CC potion and then a health potion and just alternating between the two of them throughout this fight is just going to allow you to survive very easy. The only other thing you got to worry about is the purple circles on the ground and the mobs that it spawns. So you can definitely just try and kill the mobs, or just AoE the bosses and killing the mobs that way as well, and just making sure you're running out of the purple circles that they're spawning. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward boss. So before fighting this boss, I do usually like to clear out all the mobs in this room. As we are going to be kiting this boss, it does quite a bit of damage, so we want to make sure that we're running away, popping potions, keeping ourselves alive. Reason we want to kill this boss is going to drop us the second key that we will need later on in the dungeon once we find the treasure room. But this boss doesn't really have any special mechanics or gimmicks, just kite it back, popping potions, and just playing a bit safer. This boss here on the bridge, I just completely skip entirely. There's a lot of very strong mobs around it, and this boss, it just will one-shot you. I feel like it takes a lot more time than it's actually worth, so I always just skip it and move on to the next boss. This boss for me was also a really hard boss, as it just does a lot of damage. Basically has two main attacks. So this first one here, where it digs into the ground, you just want to run along the edges rolling, as all that stuff you see on the outside, it's going to be placing that into the boss arena. So we want to keep it on the outside and not in the middle of the fight. You're just going to keep running away until it finally pops back out of the ground, where you can then go back in and attack it. Second attack it'll do, basically it screams, and then it'll start using its claws and shooting out a projectile at you. You basically just want to run away from it through rolling. You want to make sure that you're using potions. You can also use potion rolls, and you want to stay off that stuff. I just ran over as much as possible, as it does quite a bit of damage. This is the other attack that it can do. It's not ranged. You just have to stay away from it and make sure you're not getting hit by it. So anytime it's doing an attack, you just want to run away from it, basically go back and do damage. Then the final part of this boss, it'll actually crawl back into the ground, go into the center of the arena, which is another reason we don't want all of this stuff in the center of the arena, and then you just finally go ahead and finish it. This for me is a very easy boss, very straightforward. Basically, anytime you see this green stuff go down, you just want to run away from it, as the boss is going to slam down. Anytime you see this boss do a charge attack, just make sure you run away. That's pretty much it with this. So this is a boss that is absolutely completely skippable. Usually I do skip it. If you did want to kill the boss, basically what we're looking for is a floating skull, usually in the locations where these purple chests are. Not always, but I would just generally skip it. I will show you what the skull actually looks like if you do want to kill the boss. So once you find the skull, just go ahead, destroy it. You may have noticed that there was a boss without a head that was chasing you, and if you tried to kill it, it would just go down to 1 HP and then fully recover. Now that we've destroyed the skull, we can go back and actually kill this boss, which generally sits in this center room, and collect its chest. However, if you did just want to skip through this dungeon, I am going to show you exactly how to go through from the start. So from the start, run straight, go left, make this right, running straight, which will take you to the center room where we killed the boss. From here, we're going to go left through these doors and just continue straight until we go through this door, and then eventually this door, making another right. Continuing straight past this section, making the first right here, continuing straight, and then at the second door, just going all the way straight, a little bit veering to the right, and that will take you straight to the end of the dungeon. So this, I would say, is probably one of the hardest bosses in this entire dungeon, as there's a lot of mobs here that are very, very strong. They do a lot of damage. So my recommendation, there's going to be 3 floors. The first 2 floors, make sure you're killing all of the mobs even before fighting the boss in the center of the room, which on the first 2 floors there will be 1 boss in the center of the room that you'll have to kill. So I always start by killing the mobs, then killing the boss. Then do be careful, as more mobs will spawn after killing the boss. And then making your way up, as you're going to need this extra space when fighting the final boss. I will say that if you just wanted to call it at this point of the dungeon and reset and start a new run, as if you just have tier 2 gear, this is probably going to be a very, very difficult fight. So if you just wanted to reset so that you could get more fragments, more pieces of your tier 3, that is totally fine. One other thing you will notice, after you kill the boss on the second floor when the mobs spawn, there will be these flags around the outside in these rooms. I would suggest taking these out as well, as these are just buffs for the mobs. So if you're struggling with them when they come in with these buffs, you can go ahead, destroy those flags, and get rid of the buffs for the mobs that spawn on this floor. So before fighting this boss, let's make sure we have all of our potions up. You'll want a magic resist potion as well as your power boosting potion. Now this, we will have to re-kill the first two bosses that we killed on the first and second floor. So the idea is you want to stay outside of this chain lightning that the boss is going to spawn. So when this boss does spawn this, we want to make sure we're cutting down the stairs, not standing in this, as even on normal difficulty it still does a decent amount of damage to me. So we're going to use these stairs. We're going to try and fight these two bosses first, kiting them down the stairs as we go, just using any abilities that we can that maybe have some range to kill them. And we're just going to try our best to kite. Now what you can do with this boss as well is just kite them down to the first floor, because just like one of the bosses earlier, it will take a little bit of time to walk back up. So if you spawn back in and you catch it before it goes all the way back up to the top floor, you will be able to keep its HP without its HP actually resetting. So these bosses are pretty straightforward. Clear the mobs on the bridge, as these mobs actually do hurt quite a bit, especially with their charge ability. Basically, this boss is going to do a big yell at you. When you hear that yell, run away, get onto this section of the bridge, wait for it to drop down its ability. It will just rain down from the sky, just like that. And then once it does, you can run back in. There will be portions when the boss is just immune to damage, that's okay, but whenever you just hear it scream and yell, it will drop a voice line. You just run away, hide on this bridge, wait for it to drop its ability, and then run back in. The boss on the other side of the bridge will be exactly the same thing, and I'll show you where you can stand when fighting this boss. So once you hear the voice line from this boss, just like with the first one, you're going to run to what I would call the first half of this fight, just a little halfway past this little part of the bridge, and then once it drops its ability, you can run back in and start damaging the boss. Again, this boss will have periods where it is just invulnerable and you can't do any damage. So this boss, there isn't really special mechanics to watch out for. There's just a bunch of them. So just try and kill one at a time, or try and kite them around the room. Be careful with that laser beam or any dots that they may put on the ground. So just running around, even if you're not focusing one, but just using AoE abilities as you're running around the room. That's totally fine to finally bring them down. Do keep in mind as well, there are 2 Crix chests in this room that you can just grab quickly up on each side of these stairs if you want a few extra essences or maybe a chance at some accessories as well. So the next boss here is a dual boss. It is pretty straightforward. I shouldn't have killed him so quickly, but there's no real special mechanics with this boss here. It's basically just DPS him down. This boss is a nod to 2 members of the community, that being Chonky and Chris, which if you're in the actual Discord, you will see them chatting about. So I think that's a pretty cool nod to those 2. Once we do take down the boss, however, we will have to talk to Crick. Being right beside the boss, you will see all these portals spawn. This is basically just a guessing game, as the portals will never be the same. It will always be RNG based off which one. So there are 2 things we're looking for here. One is going to be progression, which is going to take us to the next boss, and the second is going to be the treasure room, the reason that we got those keys. So just keep going through until you find the right one. So it's going to be one of the last 3 up here. So this one is where we want to go if you want to kill the boss. We, however, want to get the treasure room first, so we're going to keep trying, and hopefully on this next one here, it'll take us to the treasure room, and unfortunately, it will be the last one. So we'll go back up. Now in this treasure room, this is where we're going to use those 2 keys that we used earlier. So the first one is going to be this chest here, Vault of Gelron. It's going to give us some essence as well as some magical cores, which we can use to upgrade our gear. And then the second one from Skulldrag will just give us some gold, about 10 platinum, and some extra essence as well. It's a good chunk of eternal essence, which is really nice, so we always want to try and grab these chests before heading off into the boss. So to get this boss started, we're going to kill all the mobs out in this area. We're then going to talk to Crick, who is on those stairs right there. Once we do, we will have 2 waves of enemies that will always spawn in the exact same pattern. Once we kill those waves, the boss will spawn. This boss is really, really easy. Just stay behind him and DPS him down. During the boss fight, you will have another wave of enemies that spawn, so just make sure you're taking it slow as these enemies do hit hard and just killing these waves, then sticking behind the boss and actually just DPSing it down. Okay, so now comes the final 3 bosses, and my first suggestion is skip them. They take a lot of time. They're very hard. You're most likely going to die a handful of times, so I would just recommend skipping them entirely. But if you already have a full set of tier 3 and you want to upgrade them with the pieces that you can potentially get from the bosses, then they are definitely worth doing. But going over the mechanics very quickly with this boss, he's going to summon out some lasers. Make sure you avoid those. He's going to put a circle down on the ground with a skull. Don't step in it. It's just a dot that does damage. There's going to be these little blobs it summons on the ground like that. Make sure you kill them or they will just constantly deal DPS. The big gimmick with this boss is it's going to summon ads, which you can see running behind the boss here. If those ads touch the boss, they will heal it for a big chunk of its health. So if you're not focused on killing those, the boss can just out heal your damage. So it is kind of a DPS check at this boss, because if you just can't kill the ads quick enough, it's just going to continue to heal and then you will never get to kill it. So my suggestion is you just reset the dungeon if you don't have the damage to actually kill this boss. So we're at the second last boss in the dungeon. This boss is simple yet pretty hard. And what I mean, the mechanic is simple, but it can be quite a pain. So to start it, we'll run up to this brain inside of a barrier, smack it with your weapon, and it'll start the fight. You'll get teleported. This brain here will also get teleported with you. It's going to shoot out 4 lasers that will continuously turn. It's basically a rhythm game where you have to keep running around in the circle. There's going to be a boss that spawns. It's going to be a boss from one of the previous dungeons that we've completed. It won't always be the same one, so sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll get a boss that doesn't have nearly as much HP. Other times you'll get bosses with a couple million HP, so it can range in difficulty. But basically you just want to keep running in a circle, attacking the boss using your range abilities to your advantage. You don't have to take it down to 0 HP. Once you get it to a certain percent, it will just die. The barrier will come off the brain, and then you have to DPS down the brain again to a certain percentage of HP, where you'll then be teleported back up to the top room. Once up here, you're going to have a bunch of snake creatures that spawn. Do be careful when you kill them, as when they die, they're going to drop a large AoE dot on the ground that can basically just one-shot you. So what the goal is, especially if you're a melee class, you want to damage them down until you can basically kill them with a ranged ability, and then use that to finish them off. You don't want to kill them near the actual brain, because you don't want that dot on the ground when you're trying to finish it off. Once you kill, I believe it's 4 of them, the barrier will disappear, and then you can go ahead and freely finish off the brain to finish the boss fight. So we're now at the final boss of the dungeon, the Lich. In my opinion, absolutely not worth killing. I don't think it drops any pieces of gear, just fragments. So with this boss, it just does a lot of damage, has a lot of health, has a lot of periods where you can't actually do damage, a lot of downtime. So I just don't think it's worth trying to attempt to kill this boss, as it's really just going to slow down your progress. But if you do want to kill this boss, basically it has a few mechanics. If you ever see him jump up into the air, run away, because when he slams back down, you will probably one-shot you. and he will leave a pool of like purple acid on the ground that also does an incredible amount of damage. Um, Once you do enough damage, as you can see, he will go up into the sky into a bubble where we can't do any damage, and he will summon 4 waves of mobs that have 4 mobs in it in total. So 16 summons. Once you kill them, in fact, you don't have to kill them all. As once he summons the 4th wave, if you just wait a little while, he will drop back down. We're just killing them so we don't have to deal with them in the fight as well. But basically, you want to keep the purple pools, unlike I did, and you'll see here in a second, that away from where he's standing right now, as after we get down his HP to a certain percent, he's going to put a portal in, and that's where we're going to do the final part of the fight. You also want to stay away from that purple circle that's kind of spinning. That also does quite a bit of damage, so lure him out of the purple pools. The Crig's potions are also really good here, as he does have quite a bit of CC, so that jump that he did right there, that's what we're trying to avoid, as it just does a huge chunk of damage and can one-shot you. Other than that, it's kind of a straightforward fight. It's just really hard because of the amount of damage that the Lich does. And now here with the final portion, he's going to teleport up to the roof, where we're going to go through this portal and finish off the fight. So in this section, his mechanics don't really change. The only addition now is a clone version of you will spawn every so often, shooting a laser at you that will do continuous damage. So basically, you want to make sure to take out that clone. The issue with this part of the fight, it is a DPS check. So as those purple pools continue to go onto the ground, they're going to take over the entire boss fight arena, making it extremely difficult to actually kill him if you don't have the DPS, as you're just going to continue to get cornered, which is another reason I say skip this boss. It's one of the longest boss fights, and it's incredibly hard because of the amount of damage that the Lich does. So I would suggest just completely bypassing that. But yeah, it is again like another straightforward fight. It's just hard because of the amount of damage he does, and the moves that he's actually using. So I would just recommend farm out that first section of the dungeon as far as you can to where you're having trouble, pretty much. Okay, so now that we know where we're actually going to be farming gear and how to get it, now we're going to talk about how you can really level your characters quickly after level 20. So we're going to go into specifics with each class about what gear you want, what abilities you're going to want to utilize, and where we're actually going to be farming. But before we jump into that, there is one item I quickly want to talk about, which is going to be the wolf cloak that you see here. Now with this cloak, we don't actually care about any of the stats on it. We only care about the 10% XP gained when worn, as that's going to speed up how quickly we level by quite a bit. So once you're able to craft one of these, you can share it with any of your classes that you're looking to level. Way that we get this cloak is we're going to look to do nightmare runs of the Crypts of Horror. This is going to provide us with Dark Moon fragments that we're going to be able to purchase the recipe here. Now, recipe, depending on your class, will probably be around the 7th or 8th page, and you'll need about 75 of those fragments to actually craft the cloak. But then once we do have that cloak, like I said, we can go ahead and share it with our classes and get right into leveling. So now let's get into where we're actually going to be farming post 20. So much like pre 20, we're going to be hopping into the Festering Bog, but on nightmare difficulty. This dungeon just has an incredibly high mob density with mobs that are very easy to one-shot. So we're actually going to be running to the final checkpoint of the dungeon and then leveling from there. So normally, to get past this first section of the dungeon, we would want to run across this bridge here and kill the boss. But we can actually completely bypass this boss, and I'm going to show you how here in just a second, so that I know some classes struggle a little bit against that boss, but this way we can just bypass this gate entirely. So if you run up to this rock here, and if you need to, depending on your class, you can kill these mobs so you're not being attacked if you need a little bit more time. You're going to run up to this corner here and just kind of aim your mouse a little bit up, and then just do a jump roll and you will get a bunch of height. So once we're here, we actually do need this gate open. So we're going to run up and kill this boss here very quickly. Okay, so once we have this boss killed, we're just going to run past these mobs and just come collect the final checkpoint just over here. So once we do have this checkpoint, we can now get into the specifics of each class, the gear you want, the abilities we're going to be using, and how to actually take advantage of this area to farm incredibly fast. Okay, so let's start things off with Rogue. So Rogue will actually require a bit more setup than other classes, as the items that you need will take a little bit to farm for. The items that we're looking for are going to be the tier 2 weapon set that you get from DreadForge. So luckily you can get one weapon off the main boss, and then you just need the 50 fragments to craft the second weapon. Reason we want this, every time we kill something with Phase Carnage, it's going to reduce the cooldown by 1, and since we're killing so many things, it's basically automatically going to refresh. So we just need these two. At this point, you'll probably have a full Shadow Lord set, and the only other thing you're going to want is that Wolf Cloak for the XP bonus. So once here, you're just going to run around and start aggroing all of these zombies. We're going to run up here, make sure we aggro more, jump down, use a Phase Carnage. It's going to wipe pretty much everything. We can use the second one because our cooldown will be back when we need it again. We're going to run down this way and touch this corner here, as that will actually drag a few more mobs from the other side of the wall most of the time. So you can actually see those mobs running back up here. So we're going to use another Phase Carnage, basically wipe the horde, and then use a final one to kill everything. And that's going to level us up incredibly fast. So let's now move on to the next class. So when it comes to champion, much like Rogue, we do need a bit more of a gear setup in order to help us level efficiently. So by this point, you'll at least have your tier 1 weapon set, which we're going to need to be doing weapon swaps during the route. As I explained earlier, when you're rolling with a two-handed weapon, you're just moving slower and there's a delay between rolls. So we're going to take advantage of the movement speed from the tier 1 weapon set, and then we're going to be killing everything with a two-handed weapon. So we're going to be grabbing the two-handed weapon set, which you can farm from Icy Depths, as DreadForge will only give you what you need for the tier 2 one-handed weapon set. So just like in Icy, just farm the last couple bosses in that dungeon, and then this way you can get the two-handed weapon. Warrior, just like Cleric, are really the only two classes that I ever found myself farming Icy Depths, as I just preferred farming DreadForge more than anything. And even when you're using the two-handed weapons, and this goes for any class, if you're just finding that you're just not quite one-shotting the mobs, maybe you're just lacking in damage a little bit, make sure you're popping your potions to give you that extra bit of strength needed to kill everything. So just like with every other class, we're going to start off by grabbing those mobs there. We're also going to be starting with our one-handed weapon set. Then we're going to swap to our two-handed weapon set and use the ability Call of the Weak. That's going to be the main damage ability. We're also going to want to pop our ability Unstoppable, as for whatever reason, it actually does give us movement speed. Even though the ability doesn't say anything about providing you with movement speed, for whatever reason, it actually does give us movement speed. So make sure you're popping that after you kill the first horde of husks. So roughly when we're about here, you're going to pop Unstoppable, and it's just going to give us a lot of speed to get down here, collect the mobs, and then run back up. I don't know why this ability gives us extra movement speed, but as you can see, just going to kill these mobs very quickly. When we're one-handed rolling, you can see just the movement speed that we're rolling at. It's not like we're a very fast class to begin with, but if we pop Unstoppable, you can see just how much faster we actually are. So it is actually a pretty decent move speed bonus. So make sure that you're utilizing that. And I know it can be a little bit weird to swap between weapons, but it's really going to speed up, especially when you're doing a bunch of runs, to be moving with your one-handed weapon and then swapping out for your two-handed weapon to kill everything with Call of the Weak. So moving on now to the Cleric. Interestingly enough, we actually don't need that much gear in order to farm with the Cleric. The biggest thing this Cleric is going to struggle with is killing the bosses to open up that gate to the final checkpoint. So it might be a bit of a pain, but just like before, make sure you take your time, make sure you pop potions, and eventually you will kill them. So the only thing we really need is the tier 1 weapon set for the Cleric, as it's going to increase our damage with Heavenly Strike and reduce the cooldown. Heavenly Strike is one of the best abilities on Cleric, and it has decent AoE. The gear itself doesn't matter too much. You can get the tier 1 set, but the tier 1 set for Cleric is just the worst set in the entire game, as it doesn't actually help you with solo play. It's just more for co-op play, and even then it doesn't quite perform that well. So you can go ahead and get your tier 2 set just to kind of upgrade from the tier 1 set that isn't too great. But luckily the main thing that we need is just these weapons, and of course the Wolf Cloak. So let's just hop into what the leveling route's going to look like. So with the Cleric, something to keep in mind is this is going to be the slowest leveling class in the game, as we're most of the time not going to be able to kill full hordes with our ability, as it just doesn't have the best AoE. We also want to make sure we're popping our spell power pot so we can ensure we're going to one-shot everything. And with Cleric, it's always better to play it safe, and not try and get greedy and kill the whole horde, because dying and having the husk reset and then having to wait to re-aggro them can just really slow down your run. So it's always better to just wait for your Heavenly Strike to come up again so that you can finish off killing the horde. So this one actually went not too bad, but sometimes you just won't be able to kill whole hordes and you're going to leave chunks of enemies behind. But Cleric overall actually isn't too bad. It is still slower compared to the other classes, but it's still very doable to level them up pretty quickly. Okay, so now hopping into Wizard, which is by far the fastest leveling class in the game, and actually has really low requirements to level incredibly fast. In fact, as soon as you get your tier 1 set, you can basically just hop over to Festering Bog. The only issue you're really going to have is killing those bosses, but if you just take it a little bit slow and just make sure you're using your potions, you can get through them no problem. Reason we only need the tier 1 set is because the 6th set bonus piece allows us, when we cast Meteor, to drop a second one on top of that, which will absolutely guarantee that we're going to kill the entire horde. And Meteor as well also has an incredibly large radius, so it's going to require less time actually grouping up the mobs, as we don't even have to get anywhere close to them. So the cool thing about Wizard as well is we actually have two options for how we're going to be farming. So the first one, we're just going to run up here, drop a meteor, and then we're going to, just like Rogue, run over to the corner of the wall here so that we can grab the mobs on the other side. And then as soon as we get up here, we can just look to drop that meteor. Now it's actually totally fine that I died, because as long as we kill them, we still will get the XP, just try not to die. But the other way is incredibly quick. The only thing is we're not going to kill every husk on the map, as with this method we're only going to be dropping one set of meteors instead of two, but the runs are going to be incredibly fast. Again, we're just not killing all of the mobs, and this is the method that I opted to use when maxing out my wizard, just because how fast, and it's a very chill method as well, to just watch TV and not have to think too much when you're leveling. So again, we're just going to gather as much as we can, come over here, gather them, and instead of hopping down to that wall, we're just going to come here and immediately drop a meteor. And this is pretty much going to kill everything that was chasing us from over there as well as over here. So again, you're not killing everything, as we probably had a few mobs who ran back, but as you can see, we pretty much killed everything. And this is what makes Wizard the best leveling class in the game, because of how fast the runs are using that second method. So getting into the final class of leveling, we're going to be talking about the Ranger. Now the Ranger is the second fastest class in the game to level. It's also by far my favorite class because it has a very cool method to level that we can utilize. It's also very easy to gear the Ranger for leveling as we only need the tier 1 set. So we're going to be grabbing the tier 1 bow because it's going to increase the duration of Blight Arrow by 3 seconds, and the tier 1 set here, the Crypt Stalker set, is going to increase the area of effect of Blight Arrow by 5 meters. That's going to be the main ability we're going to be using. Now one thing, you don't have to actively get this, but one thing that I did that I like to do is to get Blight Arrow duration onto your Crypt Stalker gear. Having that extra duration will actually help us, and you'll see here in a minute why, but it is also just not necessary. So if you really don't have any extra Blight Arrow duration, it's not a big deal. It's just something nice to have if it's there. Okay, so finally we're gonna get into the actual route for Ranger here. This is probably my favorite leveling method in the entire game. It's very, very cool. So it's pretty much gonna start off like every other route. We're just going to come over here, collect the husks, run up this way, but instead of going all the way up, we're just going to shoot the husk, saving a little bit of time. And then over here, we're going to do the same thing. And then once we get to these stairs here, we're going to cast Blight Arrow and immediately go back to town. So you can actually hear the husks in the background dying as we go back to town. All the husks that we're killing, we are getting XP for. And during that loading screen, we are completely invulnerable. So it doesn't even matter if our HP hits 0 and we go down, as long as we hit return to town before we actually die. Now, when you do that, you could hear in the loading screen the husk dying. It usually lasts longer than that. I've had a couple theories of why this actually happens. Initially, I thought that just because we're killing stuff, it will extend the loading screen once we're going back to town. But now I actually have a different kind of idea now that I'm max level and that loading screen isn't going for as long as it was when I was actually leveling my Ranger, is that the game is trying to update your XP as you're killing things, and while it's updating your XP, it is just extending that loading screen, allowing you to kill a lot more husks than I just did. So normally when I do that, you'll hear anywhere from like 4 to 6, sometimes even 7 times where you actually kill husks going back to the loading screen, where I think there it only did it like 2, maybe 3 times at most. But yeah, just I'm pretty sure it's based off the game trying to update the XP that you're getting, and that's why it's extending it. I'll also leave a link down below to me actually doing that when I was leveling up the Ranger, just so you can get a better idea of what I'm actually talking about when I say that. So before we actually finish off the guide here, there is one quick tip I want to give you. Let's just say you are farming and you accidentally go into a new dungeon instead of hitting resume. If you don't want to go through and have to kill the boss, especially if you're a class like Cleric who struggles killing the boss, what you can do is go out to select hero, and you're going to go down to the bottom here to backups, and you're going to find a backup that has that that checkpoint. So for example, for me, I think it is this one. So I'm going to go here, you're going to go into your backups. Now you might lose, maybe a couple levels depending on how long the save is, but it's really not a big deal as it's going to save you time from having to kill that boss. Once you go back to the Festering Bog and go to Nightmare, you will see we have the option to resume. Once you click resume, it will then take you out of the preview and you will now have saved your progress again. So this way we just don't have to go back and kill all those bosses again, which can be quite annoying. Alright guys, that brings us to the end of my guide for Dungeons of Sundaria. Hoping that we were able to teach you some things and maybe clear up some stuff you were unsure about. If you have any questions, make sure to check out the official Dungeons of Sundaria Discord, as there's always somebody in there who can answer your questions. But until then, thank you again for checking it out, and I hope you have a wonderful day.